Hi folks, welcome back to Recently Seen Reading. I'm Heather. In terms of this week's reading, it was a good reading week in terms of number of books completed and a mediocre to good week in terms of the quality and pleasure of what I read. I read a couple of things I found quite disappointing despite their prize nomination. One of the ones I read that I found disappointing was Swan Song by Kelly Jeffcott. It was nominated for the Women's Prize last year, and I found it quite disappointing. It's a historical novel, sort of. It's an account of Truman Capote and the women he surrounded himself with and how they walked away from him when he published essentially a romantic clef, sharing much of the gossip he had collected through his sycophantic behavior. But the problem with the novel itself is that it's incredibly shallow. The writing's not, in my opinion, particularly interesting. You can't learn much about the characters either as real people or as fictional people that you wouldn't already know coming into the novel if you know a tiny little bit about the 70s or about Truman Capote himself. The women in Jeffcott's novel have no depth to them. There's nothing there beyond the surface, which I think does them a disservice. It really wasn't worth the time that I spent on it, and it's not something that I would recommend. The other disappointing novel I read was John Lanchester's The Wall, one of the nominees on this year's Booker list, and it's got similar kinds of problems. Its writing is flat and shallow, but I found it particularly dull. The issues that it's trying to tackle are important, but the execution I thought was not great, so I found that one disappointing. So those were my two disappointing reads this week. In terms of books that I very much enjoyed and thought were well written and would heartily recommend to folks would be Sarah Baum's The Line Made by Walking, which was all over BookTube last year, which is essentially the account of its protagonist moving through a period of depression and a lot of attention paid to how art works. And I thought that was interesting and well done. The writing is good, the portrayal of the character is good. It has some interesting things to do structurally. The novel that I read and enjoyed the most this week would be Colson Whitehead's The Nickel Boys. The cover illustration for this one is particularly excellent, and its excellence become most apparent by the time you conclude the book. It's the story of two friends who end up in a residential school penitentiary for young men in Florida in the 60s. It's a great novel. It does really interesting things with voice and with point of view, and of course the story of the horrific things that happen in these kinds of institutions. And I think what would repay rereading in it the most would be looking, for me at least, would be looking at what Whitehead is doing or saying about Martin Luther King's rhetoric and speeches and the way they have shaped at least one of the characters' fate, and what the limitations of that rhetoric was for that particular character. So I would recommend those two novels, A Line Made by Walking and Nickel Boys, fairly highly. The other things that I read don't bear mentioning. A couple things for a research project I'm working on, the usual stack of articles, and this week coming up, I'm hoping to read a couple more novels, some genre fiction. I'm just a little bit into Bluebird by Attica Walk, who I've never read before, and I've just started Sophies Nocturne, and I'm enjoying it, but the perspective of Ralph or Rafe, the protagonist, is undoubtedly creepy, as you'd expect for a character who's a pedophile. I think that's it for me this week. Just a short little video, lots of reading, not a lot of stellar things in my reading this week. Thanks folks, bye bye.